poppin', y'all? It is your boy, Gardi3, and welcome to Coffee and Sports, the morning show. Of course, joining me just like every morning, he is the pillar of Coffee and Sports, the morning show. He is Mo Betta. How you doing, Mo?
Hey, good morning, Brett. Good morning, chat, and everybody that's joining us.
I gotta give you credit, by the way. I love how creative your names are. I did not expect to see Where's Roy Hibbert for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know what? Every time I think of Roy Hibbert, the first thing that comes to mind is the term verticality.
No, absolutely. He was just such a great defender at staying vertical. I'll always remember him as maybe the quickest fall off I've ever seen. Was such a great player until after like the 2013 All-Star break, and then it just all went downhill out of absolute nowhere. It was truly a stunning development.
Yeah. It's weird because Roy put in the work. He ascended and became like one of the top defenders in the NBA, and the league shifted again, and it went more perimeter oriented, and what they did was they exposed a lot of his shortcomings. They literally played him out of the league.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember it was funny because people will remember he struggled obviously when he had to face stretch five Chris Bosh, but I remember thinking he might be cooked the series before that when Pero Antic was just giving him buckets from the perimeter. I'm like, you really can't get out there and defend that at all, can he?
Right. Yeah, that was a weakness. He once teams extended their offense, especially the way the league is now, a guy like Roy Hibbert can't play in space. And you're a Bucks fan that there are pros and cons to drop coverage. I think there are more cons because it kind of it lets the offense dictate to the defense what they're going to do.
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of drop coverage, by the way, I thought this was hilarious. Did you see the Clippers' new shirt that they have? Their little mottos for the season.
No, what is it?
So I find this hilarious just because of the last one. So their shirt says, "Get the FUCK back." F stands for floor balance. Okay, makes sense. U, urgency. Okay, makes sense. C, consistent communication and concentration. Okay. This is the part that gets me, Mo. The K stands for no, we lost to Denver because of transition. And the reason that is so funny to me is if you thought you lost to Denver because of transition defense, how is the biggest move you made, like bringing in Bradley Beal coming off knee surgery and Brooke Lopez? I just think that shirt is funny because their offseason moves almost point to the opposite. If you were worried about transition defense, the way to, fix that isn't by getting older. So I just found that funny just because of that last one, because their moves say the complete opposite.
Yeah, the shirt alone doesn't go with their roster construction. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident the Clippers are the oldest team in the NBA. If they're not, they're top three.
I think the only team that has them beat maybe now comfortably are the Warriors.
Well, I mean, you've got Al, Draymond, Jimmy, Steph. We're talking about guys that are all 35 and older. Although the Clippers, I mean, what is Harden's got to be around 35, 36. Kawhi's around 35. Batum is in his 30s. Chris Paul is in his late 30s. I don't know if they have the Clippers, but it's pretty close. I'd like to see that.
No, absolutely. Say, speaking of the Warriors, Mo, they finally figured it out. The standoff is over. They got Jonathan Kuminga back. 2 years, 48 million with a team option that's quote unquote designed to be ripped up. So what do you think about them extending Kuminga at about 24 million a year?
So it says 2 years, but I like what you said at the end. It's really it could really be a 1 year deal, correct? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the way they design the contract, if the Warriors aren't happy in the relationship, it could be a 1 year deal, right? It's a team option. I feel like the Kaminga situation hasn't really changed, even with this contract. Just by the way it's structured and the way it took so long to put together, it's the Warriors saying we like you a lot, we just don't love you, and we're not sure how long we're going to stay together. It's weird because I feel like they kept him because they didn't want him to go somewhere else, and yet they don't really want him.
Yeah, I really thought that he was going to end up somewhere else. It felt like that that him in Sacramento might have been a fine match. He just doesn't fit with what Golden State wants. I feel like it's going to be another frustrating summer of repeating or NBA season of what we did last year. It's hey, Jonathan Kaminga, he's frustrated because of an inconsistent role, and guess what? If Steve Kerr didn't like him last year, which I'm sure he likes him as a person, but he just seems to not like his skill set and his tendencies as a basketball player. I don't know what's going to happen this year to make that change. So I'm sure his role still is going to be inconsistent, even if he maybe plays a little more because of the contract.
The
And we're going to do
Warriors.
this.
No, go ahead.
I'll say we're going to do the same song and dance as last year.
I agree. The Warriors are an NBA purgatory. On the one hand, you've got this core that has won multiple titles with a championship coach who's thinking, I still believe we can go on another run. And on the other hand, you've got this core that's pretty much well on the other side of their prime, and you should be making moves for your future. And yet I still think Steve Kerr is living in the now, right? Everything is about how can we max out Steph's last 2 or 3 seasons, and Jonathan Kaminga doesn't really fit in their present, even though he should be part of their future. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, he say absolutely. He just doesn't have the passing chops for a Steve Kerr-led offense. Kaminga's a guy that you just kind of give him, and he just wants to ISO and play his own game. So, that's really not going to fit with what they want to do. So, it'll be interesting. But thankfully, they got that over. Then they made their free agency finally official. We've heard for months that Big Al was coming, and now Al
Right.
Horford is officially a Warrior. GP2. And Seth Curry will be a Warrior in like mid-November. That's such an interesting thing what they did. They signed him to like a camp contract so he could, be with the team through training camp and preseason. Then apparently they're going to cut him and then re-sign him in November. And the reason they're doing that, by the way, is because if they sign him in November, then the prorated version of that contract, they can fit under the salary cap. That's why they're not just signing him outright at the beginning of the season. So they'll eventually be re-adding Seth Curry after they cut him down the road.
Again, I have no problem with that. Obviously, the Warriors have a plan. Dunleavy and company are doing it the way you're supposed to do. Be creative under the salary cap. They could have gave him a job, I guess, watching grass grow, and but they learned from the Clippers you can't really do that. So I ultimately look. I think Seth Curry playing with his older brother, I think it's terrific for their family. As a basketball fan, people forget Seth Curry is a terrific shooter. So in the right situations with him and Steph on the floor with Jimmy and the spacing that they're going to have, I think they're going to be very effective in different situations.
No, absolutely. And the other standoff finally came to an end. Quentin Grimes is going back to Philly on the qualifying offer. I found it interesting. His agent revealed that he was willing to sign. The last offer he gave out was like 2 years, $34 million, with a player option, and Philly just flat out said no. So here he comes back on a 1-year, $9 million qualifying offer. I get it though. Look, Mo, I like Quentin Grimes, but at the same time, he's not somebody I'd want to go into the luxury tax for. So it's an interesting situation. I think he's somebody that I think probably deserves maybe like a 20 to maybe $23 million a year contract. At the same time, if I'm Philly, he's not really the difference in me winning a title or not. So I'm looking at that like, well, why am I going to go into the luxury tax at that point for Quinn? Great player, but if Philly wants to keep him, they might have to look to shed some salary during the season.
And I understand why Philly went the route they went. It is about money. I'm actually a Quentin Grimes fan. I think that he's a very good 3-and-D basketball player. And last season, obviously at the end of the season, down the stretch run when they had all the injuries, he showed that there's more to his offensive game than a lot of us knew. That said, do I think Quentin Grimes is going to be your third option offensively? I don't. But do I think he can be an effective guy coming off your bench, playing high-level defense and still can get you 12 to 15 points a night? I think that's right in his wheelhouse. So I'm with you. I think he's worth anywhere between 15 and 20 million a year, but the Sixers just couldn't give him that or value him at that way deep enough to go into the salary cap debt. So in the big picture, I think it's a gamble, but he's betting on himself. And somebody said, what's the likelihood of George, Embiid, and Maxey all being injured to the point where he can be a focal point offensively? And I said, I don't know about Maxey, but the likelihood of Embiid and George being injured is very likely. So I think Quentin Grimes, if he can stay healthy, is going to have a big season, and then he'll hit the free agent market and he'll get a lot of offers.
Oh, absolutely. Say we already have obviously the injury to Jared McCain, and I highly doubt that Paul George and Joel Embiid stays healthy. It's such a challenge with them, right? Like on one, like you almost wanted to sign Quentin Grimes to maybe an extra year or two because you feel like, oh well, maybe Philly, everything breaks right and you get a healthy Embiid and Paul George season. But I'm just thinking, like, if you're Philly, like, that's not something you can bank on at this point.
Right.
And even if they do stay healthy, what does a healthy Paul George and Joel Embiid look like at this point? Like, Joel Embiid has unfortunately been through a lot, so I'm not sure exactly what 100% looks like for him anymore. And same with Paul George. Some people were, I was talking last night to some guys, and they're like, well, maybe if he can play somewhat near Clippers level Paul George, well, it's like, does he have that in him still? Can he still be somewhat near Clippers level Paul George? Like, it's just so interesting because I just don't know what those two even are going to look like at 100%, even if they are this year.
I like the way you phrase that, partner. I don't know their ceiling either right now. Can Paul George be a 25-5 guy? Play at an all-star caliber level? I don't, with his health issues, with his lower body, I don't think we ever get to see Embiid play at an MVP level. But how about this? What if he can play at an elite all-star level? You know what I mean? Like, could he do that? Or do they have to adjust to a new normal, which I put out there that maybe they're better off if Embiid isn't the focal point of the offense, if he's the second option. Anything to take some of the load off of him, anything to control the wear and tear on his body. It's funny because on paper, the Sixers could easily be a top 3 team in the East. And yet, because we all think about their health situation, it's more likely they're a 6 or 7 seed.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. They're that. It feels like they're that team every year where you kind of look at them on paper and you go, oh, this might be their year, but then they just unfortunately can't stay healthy at that point. So
They can't.
say I would love to see it throughout the year. Just turn to your young guys. Let the young guys cook. Let Embiid and Paul George rest. Give yourself your best shot to preserve them for the playoffs.
I've always said build around Maxey.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I want to see them, like I said, get younger. Let's run in transition. That would be absolutely great. Like I would love to see when Paul George and Joel Embiid aren't on the court. Let's run. Let's play fast. Play loose in transition.
Maybe that's the path forward for the Sixers. That when they got the young guys out there, they play a different style. And when George and Embiid on the floor, they're a little more deliberate. They're a little more half court driven. That might be their path to getting into the playoffs.
No, absolutely. Nothing but calling like Embiid or Lamar Jackson only a good, decent player is a choice. I think those two guys are just very clearly elite players in their primes, but unfortunately, that doesn't always translate to playoff success at times. With Embiid, it's just health wise, and Lamar, well, Lamar definitely still has a chance to break through his glass ceiling.
Hey, good morning, Cottrell. What's up, Damian, Kyle?
So, yeah, hey, what's up, Cottrell? How's it going, Kyle? Say, I'm looking forward. Like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with Philly, and of course, the other extension, Nikola Jovic, 4 years, $62 million from Miami. And you know what? I'm honestly fine with that. That's a high quality role player at this point. $18 million a year about is role player money. So, you know what? $62 million for Jovic, sure, why not? That's a chance I'm willing to take. I watched him torch the Bucks a couple times. He looked good doing it. So,
my problem, I'm not pocket watching. Good for him for getting that contract. I'm almost stunned that in the era that we're in now, where we're comfortable saying 18 million a year that's good money for a role player. Like, wow. Because there would have been a time when 18 million would have been great money for a star. We're just in different times. And let me ask you this question. Obviously, you know about the Tyler Hero injury. But let's say Tyler Hero is 100% healthy and Miami goes into the regular season at full strength. What are the Miami Heat? A play-in team?
Yeah, but no, absolutely. I think they're a play-in team. But it was kind of funny. It was kind of funny though. They were talking media day and they were talking like they were a finals team. So I get it. They're supposed to say that, but at the same time, I just like I don't know where this is coming from, but this team is going to be nowhere near a finals. But hey, I could see them making it far enough to get knocked out in the first round.
That's
Maybe.
what I think. That's what I think. I think that they might be good enough to get into the playoffs to get knocked out in the first round. And Cottrell's exactly right. He got the Moscow deal. Right. They had to spend the money. So yeah. Look, I just think I think Hero's a really good player, and he's probably their best player. Not if he's your best player, though, that's the problem, right? If Tyler Hero's your best player, then you have a different kind of ceiling. And that's their problem. Tyler Hero should be your second or third best player. And then you would be a legitimate title contender. If he's your best player, yeah, it makes sense that we're talking about you maybe being in the play-in or being the seventh seed or something like that. Like, I just think there are levels to this, and Miami has yet to find a franchise player.
Say best is Bam, but yeah, the team lacks talent. I mean, yeah, no, that's fair. Tyler's definitely going to be their leader on offense, but how far will a Tyler Hero-led offense realistically take you? I think he'll do great, but at the same time, I think he's just I don't think he's suited to lead a team, into the postseason and make a deep run in that role.
No, I'm with Kyle. The Heat aren't threats. Even with Tatum being out, I think Boston is better than Miami. I just do. Like I said, I like Tyler Hero, but I think that if he were on a contending team, he would be a complimentary star and not the main guy.
Oh, the Bucks media day didn't give me that much hope for this year. I'm not gonna lie. They were talking, of course, Kyle Kuzma, and Doc's like, "Oh, we just got to change his shot selection. He can't take so many mid ranges." Rangers, I'm like, so is your solution to fixing the Kyle Kuzma problem really? Let's try to make him like a high volume 3-point shooter, because we can't just have him taking layups the entire game with Giannis in the game, because that just messes up floor balance. So I got the impression that they're pretty much going to try to make him take the role player shot diet with threes and layups, and I'm just like, oh, we might get a high volume 3-point shooting Kuzma this year, which sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
Cottrell said Kuzma went bald. Maybe he means business. Or maybe not. Maybe he's just bald. But I don't care if he's bald or blonde. Same player, same skill set. You're probably going to get the same results. I don't know what Doc's talking about, because he's not a good 3-point shooter. So him shooting a lot of threes, that does not improve your offense. I would argue you might want him attacking the basket more, that maybe he can get to the free throw line more, generate offense that way, but he doesn't shoot well enough to take a lot of threes. And he's exactly who I thought he was. You traded Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma to get younger. But if you're being honest, even the current version of Chris Middleton is better than Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, I did strip Doc Rivers of his status last year, renamed him Glenn. Yeah, he's I don't know, man. He's like he has the shot diet of like Josh Smith, but with less athleticism, and that's not a good thing. That was so painful to watch. I'm like, okay, Kuzma, take the 3. Oh, we're gonna take a step in and shoot that deep 2. All right, Kuz, do you, I guess, because I can't do anything about it. Yeah, I say Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be our starting point guard. This year's just going to be interesting. Giannis was talking about Giannis finally addressed his quote unquote trade rumors, and he's like, "Oh, of course I always look to going to different teams. At the end of the day, I've told everybody for years I just want to be competitive and I want to compete for titles." And to me, that is all exactly why Shams doing this over and over again was so annoying. Because I'm like, yeah, I know Giannis has shown interest in, possibly leaving one day if we can't stay competitive. He's wanted to compete for titles. He told me that before he signed his last contract extension, the year after that, the year after. He's been saying that for years. It's not anything new. He's loyal to Milwaukee until we show that we can't be really a competitive team anymore and give him a shot at a title. Is that no the Glenn Rivers Billy Donovan head coaching treat? No, I don't care if we're tanking. That'd be awful. But yeah, no, he just finally addressed and said, "Of course, I've been saying that for years, pretty much." So it makes sense. I hope we have a deep playoff run this year to convince him to stay another year.
We always say, especially with the situations with the Tatum injury, Halliburton out, this is a good example to go with that term, the East is wide open. In a lot of ways, I think it is. You certainly can put the Knicks as a top 3 team in the East on paper. You're looking at Orlando to make a leap. Detroit should be a year better. But I don't know how that's going to all play out. I think some of the biggest mysteries in the East, the Sixers because of their health, and your Bucks. I don't know what to make of the Bucks. I know what the roster construction looks like, but I don't know how it's going to play out, right? Because there were moments last year where I thought Porter Jr. played well, really well for long stretches. But I don't know if you want him as your starting point guard. I like Porter Jr. coming off the bench.
I wouldn't be shocked if at some point during the year we turn to a Ryan Rollins at point guard. Ryan Rollins, he's like a less, sexier option than Kevin Porter Jr. He can't create his own shot like Kevin Porter Jr., but he was a dog on defense last year. He's an aggressive defender, shot 40% from three. To me, he doesn't get a lot of assists, but that's also just, I think, a product of what the Bucks offense really is on how ISO heavy it is, that he didn't get a lot of assists last year. But to me, he can be like, have the ceiling of like a Tyus Jones if Tyus Jones is a more aggressive defender. So I think he can be a solid quality role player. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him enter the starting lineup at some point this year.
So let me ask you this. Going into this season, knowing what you know, what would be, how can I put it as a Bucks fan, what would be a satisfying, realistic goal for the team this year?
You know what? It's funny because it does feel like the East is wide open. We do have Giannis. It almost feels like that we absolutely could. Obviously, the biggest thing would be get out of the first round of the playoffs at this point.
Right.
Like the Bucks always seem to have terrible injury luck, and it just results in us getting knocked in the first round every year. That being said, I feel like if we can at least get to the second round, that would be great. I could very well see us getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. That would be fantastic. That would honestly be I'd be satisfied if we made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But honestly, at this point, if we just had stayed healthy and had make it out of the first round too, that'd be great.
No, because I think about what Giannis is always saying. He wants to stay competitive because it matters to him in terms of being able to actually win one more or two more titles. You guys, what you need is one of your younger players to have a breakout season. You know what I mean? Giannis needs a running mate. And I think Miles Turner is going to help them, but he's not the type of player where he's going to be Giannis's running mate. So the question will be, who's going to step up and be that second option, that other guy that can create offense and take some pressure off of Giannis?
It almost feels like that's exactly why Kevin Porter Jr. is the starting point guard. I think he's very volatile in terms of his production, but at the same time, he gives us a secondary shot creator that this starting unit really wouldn't have without him in there. It feels like that's exactly the reason why he's starting, which it'll be interesting some nights. Say, by the way, what up, Sajin? Thank you for tuning in,
What's
sir.
up, Sajin?
Yeah, no, say, by the way, Mo, I also wanted to talk some NFL. And man, I'm not gonna lie, I saw something yesterday and I was really annoyed. So ESPN Madison, they were running a show and they had maybe the most brain dead take I've seen on the Packers season. And I just have to complain about this because it is just stupid. The take was, if Jordan Love was elite, the Packers would be 4-0. And I really looked at him and I'm just like, how in the world can you not watch Packers football and yet be working for ESPN in Wisconsin, like right in the capital of Wisconsin. Because if that's the takeaway, that's really your takeaway of the season. Like, if Jordan Love was elite, we'd be 4-0. Come on now. It is the most bizarre take. By all metrics, Jordan Love has been a top 3 quarterback this year. And even if you watch the Browns game, which is the only game where you can say, yes, he technically was an elite, his down game was after throwing the interception, he still drove us into field goal range to win that game, and the special teams let us down once again. So, I don't know. I just thought that was just a very, almost just brain-dead take by some absolute morons who just don't watch Packer football. How in the world, like I said, you get a job at ESPN Madison, and yet you are just that clueless as to what the Packers are up to?
Yeah, I agree. Look, just the last game where they tied with Dallas, that wasn't about Jordan Love not playing well. That was actually the defense taking a step back. They didn't play well. Like that defense, if you told me that Dallas was going to be able to put up that many points, I would have been like, I would have went under. Like that's not going to happen, and yet it did. So no, I don't think the Packers' record is what it is because of Jordan Love. I think that Jordan Love is one of the top quarterbacks in football. And I think this Sunday is a really big game for the Packers, obviously. But anybody that says that they're not as good as they should be because of him, I disagree.
Yeah, like if we want to look at why the Packers are, I guess 2-1-1 instead of 4-0, I feel like one of the biggest reasons, obviously, it starts with the special teams. Obviously, we had the blocked field goal against Cleveland that ended up costing us the game. We had another blocked field goal on an extra point, which gave the Cowboys 2 points, which, guess what? That doesn't happen. We just have a chance to win the game in regulation. And plus, we also were just kicking directly at Turpin, and he was getting good returns and giving the Cowboys great starting field position. Like, it feels like the number one problem, once again, is special teams. But, yeah, it almost feels like at times, too, and look, this is a guy that I still fully believe in. I have full, confidence in. I think he's a great head coach. But Matt LaFleur, I think, is interesting because if you watch him enough, you'll realize that he's just aggressive at really weird times. Like he's aggressive when he shouldn't be, but conservative when he, needs, when he shouldn't be, and he's aggressive when he doesn't need to be. He's just very backwards in that regard. And we kind of saw that in the Dallas game. When we didn't need to be aggressive, we wanted to try and score points when we could have run out the clock, which it's a decision that I, supported. But, the strip sack kind of, put an end to that. But then at the end of the game, when it was time to be aggressive and go for the win or, stay on the Cowboys' throats when we're up 10, we just didn't do it. So, going forward, it almost feels like that the thing that might hold the Packers back is more than anything is going to be that special teams and situational coaching.
Welcome to Mo's world, because my Niners lost last week to the Jaguars because we didn't take care of the football and special teams was god awful. Our special teams killed us that football game. And speaking of my Niners, you know this, they got the Rams tonight. And that is a big game. And while as a Niner fan, I could tell you why I want them to win, honestly, when I look at these two football teams, I can't tell you how they're going to win.
I love their wide receiving core. It's almost like they looked at the Chiefs that they lost to in the Super Bowl, and they're just like, let's get those guys.
Right.
I know half the receiving core is injured, but I just took a quick peek, yesterday, and it's like, who is Mac Jones throwing to? Oh, Sky Moore, Demarcus Robinson, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I feel like I've seen this one before. It's going to be interesting because I flat out am just not sure how the 49ers win this football game tonight. Like, it's going to be a challenge, and I just don't know if they have the firepower to keep up with the Rams, honestly.
To be honest, the only way I think the Niners can win this football game, the Rams have to be subpar offensively. Like, they have to be sloppy. Stafford's got to be turning the ball over. The Niners have to do something which they shouldn't be able to do. They weren't doing a lot of with Bosa, and now Bosa's gone, but they have to get after Stafford. I think to even get pressure on him tonight, Robert Saleh's going to have to bring somebody else. And I don't know if against Stafford you want to try that. The Niners aren't great against the run. You're right. I don't know. Let me take that back. I do know they don't have the offensive firepower to get into a shootout with the Rams, and their lack of explosiveness on the outside, that's going to be a problem for them. They would need to win the areas that they struggled with last week. We would need to be special on special teams. We would need to get a couple of strips, some turnovers to create opportunities. All those things would have to happen. And I'm not saying it's possible, but if I were a betting man, that offense that the Niners put out there versus the Rams offense or the Rams defense, I would say this. I would be shocked tonight, Brett, if Puka Nacua and what is I'm missing it. Oh, Devontae Adams. I would be shocked if between the two of them they don't have close to 200 yards receiving.
Oh, absolutely. By the way, so I feel like with this, Damien, I think part of her question got missed. So she made it sound like on air she had said just straight up said you need to change the offense, but it was said that she asked, do you need to change the offense, like make any adjustments? I don't think that she was after Ben Johnson per se. I just think maybe it was just bad audio or the stadium was just booming and really loud. Part of her question got missed. So, because I don't think a sideline reporter just straight up walking up to the coach and going, you need to change your offense. I don't think that really makes sense, but yeah, apparently it was later revealed she just asked, do you need to change your offense? Which, honestly, valid question when you're struggling. Just, hey, do you need to make any adjustments?
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, and it was more like the perfect storm, right? They were going in at halftime, correct? And obviously Ben Johnson was not happy with what the offense looked like. She asked to me an honest question, a fair question, and I think that he took it the wrong way, and he later admitted that and apologized. So, to me, the fact that he could own up to it, that he overreacted, good for him.
No, absolutely. Yeah, say Ben Johnson said he misheard this question, thought you made a statement. No, absolutely.
Right.
And I completely agree with that too. Play ball control and capitalize on those possessions with points. Limit the Stafford drives.
Look, Kyle, from your mouth to Shanahan's ears, and look, I think the way they've used C-Mac this year has been very smart. He's getting about 20 to 25 touches, and so he hasn't had a 100-yard rushing game, but he's had 60-yard rushing games, and he's had 75 or 80 yards receiving. I think that's the kind of season he's going to have for the most part, and you're going to and that's a good way to get good production out of him while not wearing him down. My only problem is they're desperate for another playmaker on that offense. I like what Kyle said. I think the same way. That's a great game plan, and I'm sure that's the Niners' game plan, but that's easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely. That's a tough line to try to play ball control on because I feel like the Rams are going to pretty much come into this game thinking that same thing. So I don't think they're going to let it happen quite that easily. So, say we got another rookie starting quarterback this week, Mo. Dylan Gabriel. It sounds like he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
Joe Flacco's going to serve as his backup. Shador stays third string, which honestly I think that just makes the most sense as of right now. You know, I still find funny though. I love how the media sits there and does, asks him about how do you feel about still being like the third string quarterback? And then he gave that whole mime answer.
Right.
And I thought that was smart. Ironically, right? People are gonna make fun of him for doing it, but I don't know what they would want him to say because whatever he says is just gonna get absolutely criticized to no end. Like everything he says kind of gets picked apart, it feels like. So I feel like almost the best answer he could give in that situation was just no answer. It's just kind of funny. Like this is the only situation where you're gonna hear a team, reporters ask the team's fifth round quarterback, "Oh, how do you feel about not starting?" Like it's just so odd to see. I've never seen a fifth rounder treated this way.
I'm kind of where Jory is, right? He could have done, you know what? This is a moment, and you don't hear this very often, but this is a moment when he should have borrowed from the Russell Wilson answer factory, right? Russell Wilson gives you nothing but very bland, simple answers. In that moment, all he had to say was, you know, I'm just gonna stay ready and wait for my opportunities. Gabriel's gonna get his shot, and he's got my full support, or something very bland and generic, and you would have been good, because and I know the reporters, as soon as they found out that he was still third string, they're like, let's go find Shador, let's go hunting, right? See what he'll give us. And while he didn't say anything, the way he didn't say anything gave them a ton. That went viral. And I think that he could have handled that another way. He could have been like, even if he's not really happy for Dylan Gabriel, he could have said, look, I'm happy for Dylan. He's got my full support, and I'm going to stay at the ready, waiting to get an opportunity. It could have been that simple.
No, and you know what? That's fair enough. It's one of those things that say how many third stringers do we hear from? None, because most of them don't talk.
That's true.
I also feel like a big part of that too, though, is how many third stringers are the media actively hunting down. Like I said, it's just a weird situation. We don't really hear third stringers talk, and that's true, but it also feels like that we've never really seen a situation like this where the medias are, looking for the third stringers to go get comments from. So it's an odd situation over there.
Well, let's be honest, Cleveland's a little special anyway, because you and I and everybody in the chat knows they actually have another quarterback on the roster, right? But nobody's going to talk to him. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no. I feel bad for Dylan Gabriel. I just can't imagine being tasked with, hey, congratulations, you're getting your first start. It's against a Brian Flores defense, but good luck, I guess. I almost feel like that Joe Flacco should have started another week, no matter how badly it went.
No, I think that's a fair point. Facing a Brian Flores coach defense as a rookie quarterback, that really is baptism under fire. But look, I think they were looking for something to ignite their offense, give it some energy, a spark. It seemed to work out for the Giants, obviously with Dart. Even though Dart didn't put up big numbers, he did give the offense some energy. He made some plays with his legs, didn't turn the football over. And the Chargers have a solid defense, and they found a way to win. I'm not saying their defense is as complicated or sophisticated as Brian Flores' defense is. So I do think he's going to provide Cleveland with at least some kind of energy, some kind of excitement, because either smaller or shorter quarterback. So I think they're going to roll him out more. He does use his legs more. So I think his legs can be a factor in this game. Don't forget, Cleveland's defense is actually a very good defense. And if Carson Wentz is starting again for the Vikings, and I think he is, while Wentz can look spectacular at times, he's also going to turn the football over. He does not take care of the football. So do I think there's a path for Cleveland to win this football game? Yeah, absolutely. And Gabriel doesn't have to be spectacular. He just has to take care of the football.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a tough challenge. And like I said, I'm not sure how it goes, but it'll definitely be interesting. Kind of like when Will Levis got injured and the media asked Cam Ward about him, and he said he didn't care. All he cared about it was him starting. I saw FanDuel, and they posted the funniest graphic I think I may have ever seen. They showed that through their first 4 games that Will Levis had technically better stats than Cam Ward through their first 4 game starting, and they literally asked, would the Titans be better off with Will Levis? I'm like, come on now. We saw that experiment last year. I don't know why you'd even ask that after what we saw last year.
No, I agree. Look, Cam Ward, I get it. He's a rookie. He's going to have rookie struggles, and he's going to have some highs and lows, but I don't think he's in jeopardy of losing his job. He's certainly struggled, but a lot of rookies struggle. But he's not alone. The offensive line has struggled. Your best offensive player right now to me is Tony Pollard. You got to find a way to get the football more to Tony Pollard.
Yeah, and and it's always a problem just when you're trying to develop a rookie quarterback and your receivers just seemingly forget how to catch. Like your best target on the outside, technically, I guess being
Ridley.
pretty much the corpse of Calvin Ridley, is not great. It's one of those things where I'm excited for the Titans' future. I think it's bright. But it feels like, there's definitely still some growing pains. That's something we said coming into this year. And I almost feel like that obviously the biggest step that they can do at this point to help, Cam, outside of maybe try to find him a reliable weapon on the outside, is definitely, first step, fire Brian Callahan sooner rather than later. But obviously, after that, yeah, just try to find him some sure-handed, reliable weapons that can actually catch the football. I do love Jeffrey Simon Simmons though. He maybe had the fastest sack we were ever going to see all year, just against the Texans. That was just absurd. Snapped the ball, immediately sacked. I've never seen anything like that.
They have talent. But to your point, I think this is a developmental season for them. This isn't about winning 10 or 11 games. This is about the development of their franchise quarterback, development of some of the other young players on both sides of the football. And I'm sure they would love to win because they don't play in a division where it's not a powerhouse division, right? Let's be honest, not a powerhouse division. I think it's a division that the way it's set up, it's going to be a dogfight between the Texans and the Colts to who wins that division.
No, absolutely. Fair enough. I'm curious on what the Colts do as well soon, because obviously at some point they're going to have to make a decision on Anthony Richardson. And I'm curious because it feels like he does have some potential in there. But I'm curious to see if a new situation might be able to bring out a little more than the Colts have, because it almost feels like the Colts didn't really try that hard to develop him, that they just kind of threw him baptism by fire, threw him out there and hope for the best. And that was never the way to develop him. Like, I just feel like if you went to a team, maybe like, for example, the Rams, who have revitalized careers like Baker Mayfield, and he sat back and learned behind a Matthew Stafford. I'm not saying he's going to be elite by any stretch of the words, but maybe they could still make him into a serviceable quarterback after all.
Kyle just brings up a great point. Cam Ward just needs to face the Ravens defense. That would be the medicine that he needs. I agree with you, Kyle. And look, Brett, you bring up a great point. It's okay if your rookie quarterback isn't immediately ready to start and he needs to sit a season or two. I'm with you. I think Anthony Richardson can be a comparable quarterback if he can sit. Maybe he's one of those guys, Brett, that needs to sit for 2 or 3 seasons behind a veteran. Everybody develops differently. Some guys are ready to go right out the block, and other guys need a couple of years. Jordan Love is a talented dude coming out of college, but he needed a couple of years. There's nothing wrong with that. Anthony Richardson is an athletic freak, but as far as playing positional quarterback, he needs a lot more seasoning. He needs a lot more developing.
Let's say Cam Ward gets a Cardinals defense this week, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. Hey, later in the year, we get the ultimate matchup, the matchup that most likely could decide the number 1 pick in the draft. We got Titans Saints later in the year.
I hope that's not a televised game.
Oh, the comment. Somebody I only got reminded that game exists because it was kind of funny. They were like, somebody commented and said this game needs to be flexed to 5:30 a.m. because nobody needs to be watching it.
That's rough. See, Kyle, spot on again. The Colts took a project quarterback. Right. They looked at him. They saw the tape on him, saw he was raw even from college, the best version of him in college. And then they took what they saw at the combine because he's a freakish athlete and he's a raw project, and they made him a starter knowing full well how raw he was. That's not Anthony Richardson. That's on the Colts.
Say it's almost the mark of a bad franchise. You draft a project and you throw them out there right away. There's a reason why teams like obviously the Colts haven't been able to find a quarterback, develop a quarterback in forever. I'm not sure how much credit you're going to give them on the development of Andrew Luck, who was just a true generational prospect from the jump. Like, I'm glad you didn't mess up the generational prospect, I guess, which you still did because you got him to retire early. Say teams like that, teams like the Bears just haven't been able to develop anybody because bad teams just draft quarterbacks whenever they need them and just throw them out there, and that's just a recipe for disaster every time.
Oh my gosh, Chicago's god awful, and they've been god awful for decades. Which is why, even though I criticize him, I hope they give Caleb Williams the time to develop. I'm going to criticize him if he plays well or he plays bad. I'm going to point out what he does good or bad. But again, I want to remind people, this is year 2, man. This is year 2. You're going to have to give this guy a little bit of grace and let him develop. I feel that way about all these quarterbacks. Michael Penix I thought he looked horrible his first couple of starts, but he looked terrific just last week. I think that's what you get with some of these younger quarterbacks. There are going to be highs and lows until they can get their footing and find their lane, but it takes time. Everybody doesn't come right out and they're like Andrew Luck, like you brought up. They're not going to be that guy. Everybody develops at a different speed. So I think that we're in an age in the NFL where maybe it's the fan base, the front office, or it's a combination of the two, where they don't show a lot of patience when it comes to the development of young quarterbacks.
It almost just feels like more teams need to take on like the Packers or the Chiefs draft strategy, or like what the Chiefs did with Mahomes. At the end of the day, the Packers just kind of have a saying. It feels like when it comes to drafting talent, it's draft positions before they become a position of need. That's how you end up with drafting Aaron Rodgers while you still have Brett Favre or Jordan Love while you still have Aaron Rodgers. the Packers just they want to give their rookies time to marinate and develop. So they just kind of draft them while we still have an All Pro at the position or a Pro Bowler, which tracks. It's how we end up with we lose Kenny Clark, but Devontae Wyatt steps in right away and is balling out because he's been ready. So I just feel like more teams need to take that approach to heart. Just start drafting positions before you actually need them.
Damian said, "How the hell the Bears get this conversation?"
We're talking about bad quarterback play. What other
Right.
conversation do the Bears belong in?
Right. And we're not killing Caleb because he actually played well the last game. We're just talking about it's week to week with young quarterbacks. If Caleb Williams throws for 300 yards one week, you don't want to make the assumption like, well, he's done it. He's figured it out. He's top 5 from this point on. I think it's a week to week thing because he's still in his developmental stage.
You know what's funny? Also, I always joke about how much I hate the Bears, and mainly that is kind of just to mess with you, Damien. Don't even worry about it. But the reality is, I think I've been one of the bigger Caleb Williams supporters on this on this network. I believe in the young kid. He has a lot of potential, and I truly think he's going to end up going down as the best quarterback in Bears history, and I think he can lead them on multiple deep playoff runs. I went so far as to predict he'd be a top 10 quarterback this year. I like Caleb Williams, and I think he has a lot of potential. So I joke, but look, I do love Caleb. I think he has it. I think he has it in him.
I joke around too about him, and I'm more critical and sarcastic. And I don't disagree that he'll go down as the Bears' greatest quarterback, but that's such a low bar to clear. But yeah, he could do that because the guy that he's clearing is Jay Cutler. So like I know Jim McMahon is like the folklore quarterback that they talk about, but Jim McMahon wasn't a great quarterback. He was a great personality.
I think Jim McMahon belongs in like he's almost like in the same conversations as like a Joe Namath.
Oh, where no, it's like there.
It's like, was the quarterback really as elite as you're saying, or did he just really like the personality and he didn't lose games?
We could do, and I would invite Al to come on. I would Gene, anybody we could think of that loves football. We could do a whole show on some of these quarterbacks from back in the day and just look at their numbers. If you're a numbers guy, you look at if you looked at Joe Namath's numbers, you looked at Jim McMahon's numbers. If they had those numbers in today's NFL, they'd already be out the league.
Oh, I say speaking of old quarterbacks, it's not really old, I guess, but I still find it funny, this conversation of, quote unquote, Russ playing himself out of the Hall of Fame, man.
That's a brutal one.
It's still like going on like among like social media, and I just don't get it. Because if Russ played himself out of the Hall of Fame, like, well, what did Eli Manning do at the end of his career?
But they don't talk about that. They act like Eli's career was he beat Tom Brady 2 times, and there was no other rest of his career. Like, think about how bad the Giants were sandwiched around those 2 incredible runs, right? You give him credit because he beat the GOAT twice. But I thought that when we judge players, including quarterbacks, we judge you on the breadth of your career, your whole career. He is a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. No denying that. And he should get, by the way, I think those runs, those 2 Super Bowl title runs, they're the reason he's in the Hall of Fame. It's not like one of those things where you're like, well, Eli Manning is a great quarterback, and if he hadn't gone to the Super Bowls, Brett, he would have still been a lock for the Hall of Fame. No, if Eli doesn't go on those 2 runs, we're not having that conversation about him being in the Hall of Fame.
If he doesn't have those 2 runs, he he's like a fringe Hall of Very Good candidate. Like, but even then,
I don't know. You see them
he,
numbers?
let's say he,
I don't think he's Hall of Very Good. I think he's the he will become the Manning that nobody talks about. We'll mention his name.
yeah, he's somebody that and it's funny because if we're talking about guys who are just, having great playoff success getting into the Hall of Fame, like if Eli's getting in, at that point, why doesn't somebody like Julian Edelman get in, who was also kind of a similar ilk of Julian Edelman to me was obviously more consistent during the regular season, but he made his money just coming through it time and time again in the postseason, even has a Super Bowl MVP as well. So I find
Edelman,
it
I like the Edelman reference. He's a great postseason performer.
no, absolutely. So it just like I said, I find the whole conversation funny because if people can play themselves out of the Hall of Fame, then Eli probably shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame because his last few years and even the years in between those two Super Bowl runs were just not very impressive. Let me put it that way.
I agree. And look, like I said, you can look. You have to look at everybody's entirety of the career. Russell Wilson wasn't very good with the Broncos. You know what? Let me rephrase that. He was actually solid with the Broncos. They just didn't want him. If I told you ahead of time your quarterback is going to go 26-8 and you're going to have a decent, I mean, those are good numbers. He was more than, I guess, functional, but they didn't want him. Sean Payton didn't want him. He wasn't his guy. And he started out really well with the Steelers. He just finished bad. And obviously, the situation with the Rams is very bizarre. He had just come off a 450-yard, 3-touchdown game, and then he follows it up because he has a subpar game the next game, and he loses his job. I totally get that. But I don't think he became a 10-time Pro Bowler by accident. I don't. You don't have to sell me on they won the Super Bowl because they had one of the great defenses in NFL history. I 100% agree with that. But when Ben Roethlisberger won his first Super Bowl, he was the starting quarterback, but he wasn't the reason he won the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl because they had a great defense. Ben was a game manager at best, but we don't treat him that way. And the one Super Bowl that Russell Wilson lost, he lost because his coach made the worst football call in the. It is the worst play call in the history of professional football.
And you know what's funny, Damien? I can respect. I don't think Russ is a Hall of Famer. Takes straight up more than he's played himself out of the Hall of Fame. Like I think at this point he's either Hall of Fame or he's not. So if you just say I just don't think he is, I feel like that take is more respectable than he played his way out. No, he didn't. If he was in the Hall of Fame, like a year ago, he's still in the Hall of Fame now. You don't simply play your way out of the Hall of Fame.
Hey, spoiler alert. I guarantee you, like it or hate it, Russell Wilson's going to be in the Hall of Fame. You know why I know he's going to be in the Hall of Fame? Because a guy who was a good receiver, but he wasn't special, Drew Pearson got into the Hall of Fame, and all he had to do was go to a couple of bars and cry, and they put him in the Hall of Fame. If he can get into the Hall of Fame with his career, Russ is good. Now, I'm not saying first ballot, but the bottom line is once you get into the Hall of Fame, as the years pass, do people go, well, you didn't get it in first ballot? No, what people say is you're a Hall of Famer, right? That's what it is. Russell Wilson is going to get into the Hall of Fame, and he should. If Eli Manning is in there, why wouldn't Russ be in there? Eli played. Why did he beat the GOAT twice? He beat the GOAT twice because he played with a great defense.
Yeah, that the Giants' offense wasn't inspiring in those Super Bowls. It was the defense that really clamped up.
Right. And it didn't just shut down any offense. It shut down one of the most explosive offenses we've ever seen in NFL history.
Yeah, say twice. It was just truly incredible to watch. And that defense, you knew it was special right from the jump because they went into Lambeau and shut down, 2011 Aaron Rodgers, who had one of the greatest quarterback seasons you're ever going to see. So, like, right from the jump, you knew we might be on something special. And that 2011 Giants defense was just truly special when it came to the playoffs because they elevated their game like no other.
And like I said, look, I do think personality plays an impact in sports for sure, especially with voters and pundits. Eli Manning is very affable and likable. And it's not that Russell Wilson is a bad guy, but for whatever reason, he's not well liked, right? We can both agree for whatever reason. And it's really weird because he's basically Carlton from the Fresh Prince. Who doesn't like Carlton? I like Carlton. I mean, Will is a better hang, but I like Carlton. For whatever reason, the media does not like Carlton.
Oh, fair enough. But say, Mo, that's all the time we got for today. We say anything you want to add before we get up on out of here?
No, it was a fast Thursday. Appreciate you, Damien, so much. Kyle, Cottrell, everybody checking in. You guys make sure you watch Brett and I tonight on N1 Podcast. We're doing our tiers on forwards. That's going to be really fun where we rank them. Appreciate you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Say, check us out tonight. You can see me a little bit earlier on the when we do sideline to sideline, and then you can catch Mo and I tomorrow for the morning show. So
there you go.
We're definitely looking forward to continuing to bring you quality content. We thank you very much. And Wire to Wire Podcast Network, let's ride.